What's up, guys? Welcome to Knockers on the Bottom. I'm your host, Jay Mill. Jay Miller, if you like. So let's get into it. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We're approaching 100 subscribers. So once we get there, we'll give something away. But yeah, let's get into it. So finally, we are at game week, right? We are finally here. There's Dallas Cowboys have the first game of the season on Thursday against the defending champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. It's nice to finally have real games to talk about. It was nice when training camp started and we actually had some football to talk about. But of course, with the whirlwind of things this week, it's nice to finally turn the page. So I kind of want to do a little bit of that today. Kind of put the finishing touches on the BS with the Micah Parsons situation, and then kind of turn the page to the Philadelphia Eagles. So I want to first start with I finally am pretty much over it now. That first 24 hours really was horrible. But now it's kind of to the point where, hey, man, he's on a different team. As someone once said, after the situation, transpired, he's the enemy now. He's the opposition. So at this point, it doesn't do anyone any good to keep rehashing the situation. It's over. It's time to move on. He wears the green and yellow now. Peace. See you in 4 weeks. But to some other contract news, and I'm sorry, guys, my nose is a little stuffy. Allergies really kicking my butt today. But yeah, on to some other contract news. Deron Bland and the Cowboys did agree to their contract. 5 years, $92 million. I think the real number is like 87, but he can get to 92 with escalators. So that puts him at the sixth highest paid quarterback in the NFL, and that puts him right around 23 million a year. The Cowboys look to have it out in 3 years. So the first 3 years of the contract, there's a lot of guaranteed money there. And then after that, if they want to get out, they can. His cap number this year is 1.3 million, so the Cowboys still have plenty of salary cap space. His cap number for the next 2 years after that is only 12 million. So if they could get out of that after 3 years with a 1.3 million dollar cap hit, $12 million cap hit, then another $12 million cap hit, it's a good contract. It's great for Deron Bland. He gets to get a lot of his bonus money up front. That's why the cap numbers going forward are so low. And it's good for the Cowboys because at the end of 3 years, they can decide, hey, he's playing well, let's extend him, or we don't like what we got. Let's cut ties, let's move on, and everybody, he gets a chance to get another contract while he's still young. The Cowboys get a chance to move forward with some cap space. So good contract for everybody all around. I'm happy, and I'm also happy for what that does for the defense, right? Because now that the Rob man has been paid, before he was paid, there was a lot of questions as to whether or not they would want to move him into the slot, have him play outside. He's in a contract year, so outside quarters get more money than slot quarters, yada, yada, yada. But now that he's been paid, doesn't really matter. Now you can play him where you got to play him. If you want to play him on the inside, you want to play him on the outside, he has his money. So that doesn't really affect that anymore. And it actually makes the Cowboys defense a little bit better moving forward, knowing that, in this particular matchup, which we'll get into later in the week, as far as Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll talk about matchups between, Cowboys offense, Phillies defense, Phillies offense, Cowboys defense, and then getting the game picks and stuff like that. But as far as just the 10,000 foot overview, which we're talking about today, it helps him and the Cowboys as far as now there's no politics as far as how we have to use him, where we have to move him because he has his money. So he's not losing money by being a team friendly guy. And not saying that DeRon Bland wouldn't have been anyway. I personally feel DeRon Bland would have been fine if the Cowboys would have done what they needed to do as long as they were winning. But now that takes that away. He's got his money. I'm glad. I like DB, and I'm glad that he's locked up to the Cowboys long term. Now, as far as Philly this week, I'm very excited to see what the Cowboys do. They got some additions here with Kenny Clark and earlier in the offseason, George Pickens. And I'm excited to see what that does against the Philadelphia offense and the Philadelphia defense. Now, Philly will be celebrating their Super Bowl when the Cowboys come there. So Philly will be putting down their banners. They'll be, unveiling their Super Bowl banners and their trophy and the spectacle, and people are probably gonna have their rings on. That crowd's always raucous when Dallas comes. It's gonna be even more raucous. Now that they're celebrating the Super Bowl and the Cowboys just traded Micah Parsons and the Cowboys are on the road and it's Sunday Night Football, like all the ingredients of your traditional Cowboys choke is there, right? And I'm not saying traditional Cowboys choke is in the Cowboys are the favorites and they come in here like a juggernaut and they should, be able to whoop Philly's butt. That's not what I'm saying because honestly, Philly is the favorite. They won the Super Bowl last year. On paper, they have the better team. I personally think they have the better team. The Cowboys are on the road, which also makes things exponentially more difficult. It's going to be loud. You have a lot of rookies, right? You have rookie running backs, two of them. You have, actually one of them in this game because Phil Maffa's on the PUP list right now, or injured reserve designated to return. But you have a rookie running back, you have a rookie offensive lineman, two second-year offensive linemen, one fourth-year offensive lineman, a receiver with his first year in the system. So, it could get pretty ugly pretty quickly, and we'll get into predictions later in the week, but that wouldn't surprise me, so to say. But I also think with an environment like that and being an athlete and just kind of speaking from the perspective of, hey, we got to go out here, we got to play. It's us against pretty much everybody at this point. Nobody believes in us. The galvanizing effect of that, but also the compartmentalization, right? Like the being in your own little box, being in your own little world. So between being able to compartmentalize the BS as far as, hey, Micah got traded, all this stuff is going around our team, we just got a new player on our team, but you kind of have to be able to kind of box those things out and focus on what you need to do. So that's the compartmentalization part. But then the other part is the competitive, like us against the world part, right? Which is, it's something to be said about going on a road as a team, and especially in this type of environment and having kind of everybody doubt you and everybody pick against you, and they're celebrating and stuff like that, and you kind of want to knock them off their rocker, right? And when I played football, I never played on a lot of great teams. I will tell you that right up front. So there was always the reason we weren't great teams was we weren't together. We weren't gelled. We weren't cohesive, and a lot of people had warring mindsets with each other on the team, right? Some people had certain things they want to do, and other people had other things they wanted to do, and nobody quite wanted to accomplish the same thing. Most people wanted to accomplish whatever they could for themselves, right? But the Cowboys, I don't view in that way. They don't seem like that type of team. And going into this environment, more so looking at it as, we want to stick together. We kind of want to have that mentality of the 300, right? We're this small group against this large mob. And what we want to do is we want to go out and show them, hey, this is going to be a fight through and through. This is not going to be an easy night. This is not going to be, win or lose. This is not going to be a walkover, right? You're going to have to fight for what you get. And we're here to make you fight, because if you don't fight, we're going to fight. And if you don't fight, hey, even David put a rock in Goliath's head, right? So it's one of those situations where I hope this kind of brings that out of the Dallas Cowboys. It's been a lot of years looking at this team, even though, from the perspective of knockers on the bottom, we've only been here since last year, but, I've been a Cowboys fan pretty much my entire life. So looking at this team, there hasn't necessarily been a lot of moments that I could think of where the team defied expectations based on cohesiveness and based on being together. I can think of that in 2014 and 2016 in particular, because both of those teams were expected to be nothing. And then they came out and they were a whole lot of something. So I'm not saying that this year's team is going to be like those teams winning 12 and 13 games. That would be a lot. As a matter of fact, when we get to the end of this episode, I'll make sure to give you my updated prediction. I know we went through it when the schedule came out, but a lot has changed since then. But I still think the Cowboys have a chance to have that effect of, hey, everybody thinks we suck, right? Everybody's up against us, right? And not only that, because it's not just the mindset of thinking you suck. You have to actually have some talent that people are not predicting or people are not respecting. And I think the Cowboys have both. I think they have talent that people are not predicting, and I think they have talent that people are not respecting. And I think that recipe combined with that mindset is what allows you to defy expectations. And I do think that the Cowboys have the chance to defy expectations this season. Now, that also depends on who's setting the expectations, right? So in this case, you have some of all different types. You have Colin Cowherd calling this a 5-win team. You have Vegas calling this a 7.5-win team. The line didn't actually move that much based off the Micah Parsons trade. I think it moved maybe a half a game. I think they were 8 in Vegas, and then they moved to 7.5. So Vegas said, you're a bad team, and then you lost Micah Parsons. You're still a bad team. It doesn't make you that much worse, and it definitely doesn't make you better. So there's that expectation. And then there's a large segment, including myself, of Cowboys fans who ripped them for the Micah Parsons trade, right? It was stupid. You traded away your best player to a team that's been kicking your butt for the last few years, whether it's in the playoffs, whether it's in the regular season. They've been beating you. You want to go to that Green Bay Packers shellacking a couple of years ago in the playoffs, you can look at that. You can look at their last year with Aaron Rodgers, where the Cowboys had a 28-14 lead and lost that off the run game. The Packers didn't even roll the ball to get back in the game. They ran it and forced some turnovers. So it's a team that has consistently haunted you. It's a team that has consistently beat you. And not only did you trade a player to them, you traded your best player to the team that's been kicking your butt. So there's a lot of people talking about that. A lot of people saying, hey, Kenny Clark is washed up. The Cowboys got a guy who's washed up, who's not necessarily ready to be what he was. And now that he's 29, because, we're talking about athletes, so 29 is like one of the signatures of death. He'll turn 30 in October. Oh boy, you got a 30-year-old defensive lineman. So there's all those different, narratives around that can galvanize the Cowboys. They definitely have something to prove, but there hasn't been too many times where I've seen the Cowboys have the backbone to follow through with that proof, so to speak. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens going into this Philly game. Now, one of the things I do want to make sure that I'm clear about, and I've said this all off season, and I'm going to reiterate it here, is that the Cowboys will not be hitting the ground running. I am pretty adamant about that. Like, I know that we think George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb, offensive, it looks really, really good, but I do think with all the newness on this Cowboys team, new staff, a lot of new players, a lot of young players, I wouldn't expect that if they come out and they get their butt handed to them, like, they're not galvanized, or they are, but they're just not good enough yet, and they get their butt handed to them by Philly on Thursday Night Football, the season's not over. You know what I'm saying? The season is not over. Or if they lose a close game, it doesn't mean that they're going to be better than we expect. That's not what's going to happen here. The Cowboys are definitely going to have a little bit of a slow start while they're figuring it all out. And if they don't have a slow start, then I would be extremely worried, because that means they're starting based off the element of surprise, and then they're going to get to a lull. Now, the season is a roller coaster, so if they have that element of surprise and they get out to a fast start and then they have a lull, but then they pick it back up, that's okay too, but I wouldn't expect anything consistent. You shouldn't look at this as a consistently ascending team unless it goes the way I think it's going to go, which is a slow start, right? And then as the season goes along, they get kind of better and better and better. That would be the ideal situation. But as we know, or at least I know, and I'm pretty sure you guys know if you've been football fans and at least Cowboys fans for any number of time, the season is never consistent. There's ebbs and flows. There's ups and downs. It's not a consistent ascending season. It's not a consistent descending season, at least not for your Dallas Cowboys. There's other teams that go through that, but the Dallas Cowboys seems to be more of a roller coaster. There's a reason why there's been a few years where we call them the cardiac Cowboys, because things are up and down, and just when you think they're out, they're back in. Just when you think they're in, they're back out. Just when you think they're going to lose, they win. It's just all kinds of craziness. That's what we're going to come to expect from the season, but hopefully they're peaking at the right time. Now, as far as revised win-loss totals, so I was on record when the schedule came out. I had them at 12-5. With everything that's happened during the offseason, I would kind of revise that and I would get closer to anywhere between 8 to 10 wins. If I had to put my money on it, I would go 10 wins. I really would. I think there's going to be some things that they do well. And I think there's going to be a lot of surprises in the schedule. Now, 10 wins is not great. 10-7, 3 games above 500. And maybe for most of the season, they're teetering around 500 and they win a couple of extra games at the end. Like, I could see them going into, week 15, 16 at 8-7. And then they win their last 2 games to get to 10-7. Like, that's something I could see. So if they could go into week 15 at 7-8 and win, or I'm sorry, 7-7, and win their last 3 games to go 10-7. It could be something like that for the Cowboys, but I would expect most of the season they're gonna be teetering around 500. They could be 4-3 after the first 7 games, and then after the next games they could be 7-7. Just teetering. But I do think 10-7 is a reasonable expectation. If the bottom falls out, I could see them as low as 7 wins, like last year. But I do think they get at least above 500. Let's say that. At least above 500. I don't know if that's enough to get them in the playoffs. Ball bounces here or there. They end up 9-8. They might be sitting at home, but might be feeling really good about themselves going into next year. So we'll see what happens. We'll get into offensive and defensive breakdowns tomorrow, Wednesday. We'll get the pregame show going, and we'll be here Thursday postgame to cover it all, no matter how great or how ugly it looks. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hit me up on Twitter at JMillerIYL. That's JMiller if you like. You can also hit me up at knockersatthebottom@outlook.com, knockersatthebottom@gmail.com. Leave comments, questions below, anything that you want me to cover, any specific things that you want to say. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Love you guys. Until next time, I'm your host, JMill. JMill if you like. This has been Knockers at the Bottom. Peace.